So you're playing Genshin, you're doing some 10 pulls in the current banner, and you get 5-star Nahida. Now, what do you get with Nahida besides the Dendro Archon? Spoilers, because my wife hasn't even finished Sumeru yet. Well, Nahida is a Catalyst-wielding Dendro user who is one of, if not the best, quote-unquote, best characters in the game. And in this video, we are going to look at the basics of Nahida, how her kit works, and a couple of other things. I'm also going to make different versions of this video for TikTok just to try them out. So be on the lookout of that, where I'm going to kind of make like really quick individual things. Also, I know I haven't been posting much videos. I've been sick. I had to get my fingertip taken care of because I almost sliced it off. So a lot of things have been going on. So apologies for that. And as a thank you, no ad read today, except for myself. Follow me. Now at the end of the YouTube video, I am going to show my complete Nahida build. So if you want to see it, check it out there. But let's go look at how her kit works. So her normal attacks are going to be fairly normal. They are going to be applying Dendro. They're not going to do physical damage. We're not doing shenanigans here because she is a Catalyst user. She is going to kind of hopscotch. Right, I believe is hopscotch. It looks like pressing on a keyboard key. So a lot of people will say like Control-Alt-Delete for her charged attack, which she creates this big cube, Dendro cube, and it will hit anything kind of within the AoE. Now the whole point of Nahida's skill, whether you tap or you hold it, is to apply this symbol to the enemy. And whenever you apply this symbol to multiple enemies, you will chain them together. Whenever you chain the enemies together is how you really make use of her skill. Her hold, she is going to go up in the air a little bit, get interruption resistance, that way you can hit multiple enemies, and you can spin around, marking up to 8 enemies. Whenever you release a skill, it is going to apply the mark to all of the enemies that you saw, up to 8, and chain them together as long as they're close enough. What this mark does is it does do an instance of Dendro damage, but it remains on them for a long time. When you cause a reaction involving Dendro, so that would be making a bloom, doing burning, doing aggravate, doing spread, anything like that, it is going to reapply Dendro to the enemies that have this mark on them, including the ones that you don't hit. So if you hit one and you cause a reaction off of that one, all of the enemies that are chained to it that have the mark will also be hit with an instance of Dendro. So you'll be able to see that if we cause a bloom with like Coco right here, then it is going to chain and do another instance of Dendro damage to the other enemies that are not close enough to Coco for her to hit them. So it is really, really good for keeping Dendro onto enemies because it reapplies the Dendro. So it makes it really, really good for aggravate, makes it really, really good for creating blooms for either Bountiful Core like this team, or hyper blooming or burgeoning or something like that. It's really, really good for applying Dendro to enemies, which is why I said at the beginning that Nahida is one of the quote-unquote best characters in the game because of how much Dendro you can apply with just her skill. So if we were to use like Sethos and Nahida and Furina together, then we are going to have a lot of Dendro application, right? If Furina's minions trigger a bloom, it'll reapply the Dendro from Nahida's skill. If Sethos hits an enemy that has this mark on them from Nahida's skill, it will reapply Dendro to every enemy that has the mark and is chained together up to 8. So you really, really want to mark as many enemies as you can with this, and then it is going to apply a ton of damage. Now, one of Nahida's passives does increase the damage and crit rate of this reapplication based on her EM, so you do want to give her a bunch of EM. It does have a cap though. Now we are going to look at her burst. And her burst is going to do a couple of different things. It is going to put up this shrine, and it is going to allow you to share her EM to your other party members. That is her other passive. Now, depending on the elements that you have in your party, it is going to also do a couple of different things, right? If you have a pyro character in your party, then it is going to increase the amount of damage that her skill does. If you have an electro character in your party, it's going to decrease the trigger interval of her reapplication of her skill, right? The chain marks that we're talking about is going to decrease how often that happens. It'll happen more. Hydro extends the duration of her burst, meaning that you share EM with your other party members even longer. So that's why it's really, really good in Bountiful Core, because it means that all of the party members get the EM share longer. I can permanently have it up, basically. Now, these skills you can see right here, her burst is level 1. Whenever you level up her burst, it does increase the amount of damage on the pyro, decrease the amount of time even further on electro, and increase the duration from hydro. So in this particular team with Sethos and Farina, it is going to last longer because of the hydro, and it is going to reapply itself more often because of the electro, and getting it to level 9 or even crowning it means that it's going to happen very, very often, adding up damage, but also allowing for more blooms to be made, more EM to be shared, which is great in both of those teams, the Bountiful Core and the Sethos team. And it's going to also make it to where it's reapplying more often, like Sethos. So this is a really, really good thing. It doesn't do any damage on its own, but it makes Nahida's skill do more damage overall, or in like Bountiful Core, the EM sharing lasts longer. So for instance, on like the EM sharing from her passive, Sethos has 444 EM. If we use her burst, then he's going to go up to 694 EM, because you want 1,000 EM on Nahida to get the full amount of transfer over. My Nahida has well over 1,000, so I do get the full 250 EM share to Sethos. Now, my Nahida is a typical build for Bountiful Core, meaning that I've gone full investment onto EM. So let's look at artifacts for a similar build Nahida. For artifacts, Deep Woods is going to be her best. It is going to increase her Dendro damage, but it's also going to make enemies weaker to Dendro damage by 30% after using their skill or their burst, or after you hit them with the skill or their burst. And that is really, really good because there are not many ways in the game to make enemies weaker to Dendro. This is going to increase Hyper Bloom damage, Bountiful Core damage, regular Bloom damage, spread damage, burning damage, Burgeon damage. Is going to increase all of those things because all of those are considered Dendro damage. For the main stats, of course, we are running full EM across the board to get her as much EM as possible. This is so that way her burst shares as much EM as possible. For weapons, I do have her on 1,000 Floating Dreams, which is her signature, which is one of, if not her best weapons. However, if you do not have this weapon, you can still, there's still a couple of different options that are really, really good. Sacrificial Fragments is really good. It's going to get a ton of EM onto Nahida. You don't necessarily care about the passive because her skill cooldown isn't very long, so you don't care about the passive. You mainly care about the EM. If you don't have sac frags, or you have it on somebody else and you don't have enough to go around, you can always use a 3-star weapon, which is going to be Magic Guide. This is also going to increase the amount of EM on Nahida, and it actually gives a fair good amount of EM. The passive is also more usable than the sac frags passive. You do, of course, have another one called Morning Everstar. This one, not a lot of people have. I don't even have one of them. I believe Magic Guide will give you more EM than Morning Everstar, so I would just recommend that you stick with those 3, her signature, sac frags, and Magic Guide. Okay, so we're gonna look at my full Nahida build. She's level 90 out of 90 with 22,800 HP, almost 1,400 attack, and 1,126 EM. This is with Dendro Resonance. Her crit split 23.3 over 62.4 with 128 ER. We are not super worried about her crit split. We do need to make sure that we have some ER on her though, so that way we can use her burst off of cooldown to always keep it up. For weapons, I am running a level 90 R1 1,000 Floating Dreams, which is a signature, which is phenomenal for her. For artifacts, like you saw, 4-piece Deep Woods with all EM main stats, and then of course EM in the substats on her flower and her plume, as much as I can get to allow her to break that 1,000 EM mark. With a little extra to spare, because I do use Nahida to create blooms in Bountiful Core, and we want as much EM on our characters for creating those Bountiful Cores. She is C0 and her talent's 541. And actually right now, I am going to level up her burst to get that extra extension. So that way it is on the field even longer. So that way I just always have her EM sharing going over to like Nilu, Kave, and Coco in this instance. Now, obviously I use Nahida for my Bountiful Core team mainly. I have been using her some with Sethos, not in the Abyss or anything, just kind of exploring. In the next video, we are going to look at several different teams for Nahida. One of them is going to be this Bountiful Core team, show it off, talk about how it works and why she's so good in it, talk about her in an aggravate spread team with Sethos. Then we're going to also talk about like Sniper Nahida, which is a very, very niche kind of build where you're no longer building her for just EM. You're going to give her like a Dendro Goblet, some crit rate and crit damage kind of stuff. So that'll be in the next video. And again, I'm going to try and do a couple